Give just one more minute for folks to sign in, and then we'll get started with our webinar. Thanks for being here. Good afternoon, and welcome to today's webinar, Outdoors for Everyone, Engaging More People in the Outdoors. My name is Joe Fox. I'm the Outdoor Recreation Manager here at the Northern Forest Center. And as you likely know, considering you've pre-registered for this event, the Northern Forest Center is an organization that seeks to create rural vibrancy by connecting people and the economy to the forested landscape. We've been working closely with communities across the Northern Forest for close to 25 years, and we are one of the very few organizations that's working across a multi-state region. If you'd like to learn more about our organization, please visit our website, northernforest.org, and subscribe to our digest. We have long seen access to and engagement in outdoor recreation as both a key ingredient in what makes up the fabric of vibrant communities, as well as an avenue to both retain and attract residents to the region, in addition to being a tool to generate economic activity. Unfortunately, the benefits of outdoor recreation have not been equitably shared by society at large. For a myriad of reasons, the diversity in outdoor recreation participants in this region, whether that be racial, gender, socioeconomic, or other, has not matched the diversity that we see in the general population. Our organization is pleased to be joined today by folks that are working to address this imbalance and representation and working hard to connect historically underrepresented populations with outdoor recreation. Before we begin, I'd like to quickly address some housekeeping issues and talk about our run of show. First, our panelists will each introduce themselves, taking about 5 minutes each. Then I will facilitate a question and answer session with all three panelists. This will be about 30 to 40 minutes. And then finally, I'll facilitate a question and answer session with the panelists with questions that you and the audience might have. Please note that I have colleagues working behind the scenes, screening your questions, and they will be forwarded to me as appropriate. We will likely be talking about some subjects that may make folks slightly uncomfortable, and we must ask that questions and comments be asked in a way that is respectful. Disrespectful or derogatory comments will not be tolerated. So with all that said, it's my great privilege to introduce you today to our three panelists. Kari Taylor, who is the director of the Western Maine Addiction Recovery Initiative and is a person who's in recovery herself. Zach McCarthy, founder and executive director of Inclusive Ski Touring, and Clarice Torrient, who's a recreational enthusiast, writer, volunteer, and a strong advocate for inclusive recreation in the Adirondacks. Our panelists will give a quick introduction about themselves and the work they do to make the outdoors more welcoming to all. Our hope is that by the end of this webinar, you will come away with some ideas for programs that you can implement or concrete steps that you can take in your own communities to spread the joy of outdoor recreation. So, with all of that said, I'd like to introduce you to Kari Taylor, Director of Western Maine Addiction Recovery Initiative.
Thanks, Joe. I appreciate the introduction, and I'm happy to be here today to be able to share about our program. So as Joe said, I'm the Executive Director of the Western Maine Addiction Recovery Initiative, WMARI for short, and also the Hills Recovery Center. We are in Western Maine, specifically Oxford County, although we do spread out a little bit beyond its borders. And also, as he said, I am a woman in recovery from substance use disorder. So what I wanted to talk to you today about is our Western Maine Recovery Outings program. And I'm really excited to be able to share about it. I love this program. Nature has been a huge part of my own recovery. So I love that I have the opportunity to share that with other people. So essentially, the Recovery Outings program is a program that connects people in recovery from substance use disorder and affected others which is a term we use for friends, family, kids, loved ones. We're connecting all of them with nature-based recreation. We also welcome people in active addiction or maybe people that are just recovery curious. They're not really sure where they stand. So it's super important for us to foster connections between participants and also to ensure that a safe space is held for all. So we know that spending time in nature provides well-documented physical and mental health benefits. And nature can be an integral part of somebody's recovery journey. It's that way for a lot of people with substance use disorder. And Western Maine has ample natural resources. We are completely surrounded by it. We are in the middle of it. But what we found is that many people in recovery lack the financial resources, the skills, or the comfort level to take advantage of outdoor recreation. So our program works to reduce those barriers and provide a comfortable space for organic connections. That is like key to our program. Organic connections is a beautiful thing that people can make with each other and also the natural world. And we don't do this by ourselves. We work in partnership with Maine West, Healthy Oxford Hills, and the Larry Labonte Recovery Center. So a little bit about the activities. This is the fun part. We usually schedule, we've been doing this for a few years now. This last year, we run on a calendar year, January to December. We were able to put together 11 recovery outings. So we do things like hiking, cross-country skiing, paddling, wilderness survival, snow tubing, fishing, gardening. We're always looking for new ideas and new activities. We put a huge emphasis on the connection between nature and mental health and recovery. And again, what we have found to be very true is that the conversations happen organically and they can be significant and intense in a really short period of time. So what do I mean by that? Everybody there knows that there is a commonality between us, whether affected other or struggling personally with substance use disorder. So it's about holding that safe space. And we find that people feel comfortable sharing very personal stories about themselves and experiences, and that is well received and reciprocated. It's really a beautiful thing to see people feeling comfortable talking about maybe some of the things that they hold the most shame or guilt around. Why do outdoor activities matter in recovery? They do, and it can be significant. We've collected a lot of participant feedback, all positive, some constructive, and we try to work that into our planning as we move forward. We've had over 100 individuals participate in our outings program this year, and most of them do multiple outings. I think one of the best things about the program is people tell us frequently that it's something that they've never done before, or they've always wanted to, but they couldn't afford it, or they didn't have anyone to do it with. So that's a really beautiful thing to hear. And then the other thing is people then go out and do those activities again on their own. So for example, we had a fishing outing this summer, and we provide fishing licenses for everyone who registered, also a rod and some other fishing gear. And several people came up to us afterwards later on and said, oh, I took my kids fishing again, or, I was able to go out this weekend to this new lake. So that's really cool to see. I think one thing I forgot to mention is, along with reducing those barriers, those financial barriers, is the fact that when we can, we do provide gear. So the outings are completely free to the participants. The gear itself for the outing, like kayaking down the Androscoggin, we pay for that. But when we can, we also purchase gear for the participants and let them take it home with them. So I think ultimately this program is about community building for us. And it's about peer support which is an evidence-based practice and can be extremely effective in helping people to overcome addiction. That's
All
it.
right, that is amazing. And thank you for what you do, bringing folks into the outdoors and creating that safe space.
Yeah,
Excited to
thank you.
talk to you. Excited to talk more in a little while. Let's hear next from Zach McCarthy, founder and executive director of Inclusive Ski Touring. Hi, Zach.
Hi, Joe. Thanks for the introduction, and thank you everyone for being here today. As Joe said, I'm the founder and executive director of Inclusive Ski Touring. We were founded back in the winter of 2021. We started as a just organic group of friends who were kind of offering an opportunity for anyone to come out and join us to go ski touring or splitboarding. Initially, it was very organic. It was just shared on my own social media throughout the season. There was a lot of demand, so we created a social media page for Inclusive Ski Touring and an email list to have a little bit more concise information. Throughout that winter, we ended up getting out with over 220 different participants. So seeing the demand for the program, that summer I decided to set up Inclusive Ski Touring as a nonprofit organization, as the goal has always been to provide opportunity and never have any sort of financial base. So following that, we were registered as a nonprofit organization, and we've been able to grow over the last couple of years. Up until this point, we've had over 2,000 participants join us so far. We offer programs that are open to everyone. We offer women-specific programs and programs for individuals who are historically underrepresented in the outdoor community, such as people of color or queer individuals. To offer these programs, we partner with some other incredible organizations, such as Outdoor Afro, Latino Outdoors, Kindling Collective, to be able to really connect with the participants and ensure that we're providing a safe and welcoming environment for these individuals to get out and try the sports with us. So our mission is to develop an inclusive uphill community through organized group programs. And part of this is ensuring that we're able to offer these programs in a financially accessible way. So we subsidize all of our programs in order to make these programs financially accessible for anyone to come out and join us. And though we do charge a small program fee for these, any participant is able to go in and actually waive our program fee. So it's completely free from our side to join. There are still some costs associated, such as an uphill ticket at the ski resorts. But someone could come out without any gear and join our program at, say, Cranmore Mountain this upcoming year. And pay $15 to have uphill equipment and uphill lesson and be able to get out and learn ski touring. So we really strive, or splitboarding. So we really strive to ensure that these are financially accessible. We offer programs at Mount Abram in Greenwood, Maine, at Whaleback in Enfield, New Hampshire, Cranmore in North Conway, New Hampshire, and we offer an intro to backcountry program, which is sort of a next step program from our on-resort programs on Mount Washington in Jackson, New Hampshire. Over the last couple of years, if we've continued to grow more and more, like for this upcoming season, we're really excited to be offering 70 different programs across January through March. We have about 70 volunteers to help these programs happen. And then 2 employees for our intro to backcountry program. We're aiming to get out with 1,000 participants this winter and just excited to make that happen. So.
That's impressive. Did you say you've had 2,000 participants already?
That's correct. Yeah, we've had 2,000 participants since our founding season. And just excited to keep growing on it.
That's incredible. Awesome. Zach, thanks for the introduction. And again, we'll come back soon and ask you a few more questions. I want to get to our third panelist, Clarice. Clarice has a amazing background, and I won't even attempt to describe all the things that she's involved in. So I'm going to let you tell your story in your words. Welcome, and we're so pleased to have you here.
Thank you, Joe. I really appreciate the opportunity this afternoon, and thank you to everyone for joining this conversation. I think it's really important. And I just want to say that I don't represent anyone but myself today, but I am involved with numerous groups. I guess my story really starts back in, I believe it was 2020. I applied to be a volunteer summit steward with ADK. And if you don't know, the High Peak Summit Steward Program is an alpine ecology conservation program in the Adirondacks, and volunteers and some paid staff during the season go up to some of our most prominent high peaks and meet with hikers and backpackers and really do that education work to preserve that really pristine and living natural history museum on those summits and the high peaks. So I applied to be a High Peak Summit steward. I went to the training and I realized very, very quickly that no one looked like me. And I think that there was at this point in time, it was 2020. The climate in our country was very tense around race relations. And for many years, I've been in outdoor spaces. I was a long distance runner. I ran cross country in high school and college. Many distance people outside the United States don't typically look like me either. But I have had wonderful friendships and opportunities and friends who are stewards of nature growing up who took me hiking and to their parents and families' homes, and it really fostered and reinforced this loving and community-based relationship with the land, and I felt really grateful for that. And so in 2015, when I moved to Albany, New York, and I was smacked in the middle of the Catskills being south of me, the Adirondacks being north of me, the Green Mountains and Berkshires being to the east of me, and the Schoharie Valley being to the west of me. I just felt like I was in the most privileged area of our state, of New York State, that I could be living in, having such a love for nature. And at that point, I just hit the ground running and spent so much time outside, either backpacking or hiking or snowboarding or roller skating in the streets. But when it came to 2020 and I was spending a ridiculous amount of time in the Adirondacks, I felt like it was time for me to give back to a place that I found so much security, healing, nurturing in that space. And I wanted to look for an opportunity to volunteer and give back. So that's when I volunteered to be a High Peak Summit steward. And I just realized, like I had aforementioned earlier, that there were not many people who looked like me in those spaces. I'd go days or times of being in the backcountry and I don't see anyone who looks anything like me. And I'm very light skinned. So I am Black and I have a lot of privileges and we'll get to that later, but it's just something that you notice. And also I've had a lot of instances where people have been pretty aggressive towards me when I'm by myself out in the backcountry, telling me to leave, that I shouldn't be summiting, asking if I know what I'm doing, just things that I know that my friends, and I've asked them who are white, who have been out in nature, who are really just as experienced and informed as I am, who haven't had those experiences. So I digress, became a High Peak Summit steward, realized not many humans look like me. And I asked the coordinator just boldly once, I was like, have y'all ever had a Black Summit steward? I'm just curious. And she was just like, no, that hasn't been the case. And you're the first one. And I was really, really shocked. I wanted to be wrong. I wanted to be wrong. I didn't, it was 2020, the program had been around, I think, for about 20 or 30 years at that point. And I could be wrong, don't quote me on that, use the Google, but I was shocked. And so the club, was really excited by it too, and offered me an opportunity to share my story. So I wrote an article. They published that seemed to attract the attention of a lot of humans, which then begetted an opportunity to have a column with the Adirondack Explorer. And my column is really based in a lot of my nature experiences. I've written from, and specifically in the Adirondacks, I've written from everything about my time. I did the Norfolk Placid Trail, so 138 miles, 10 days in backcountry, snowboarding at Gore, and some racist experiences I had there. But also just having joy outside. I'm just a human. I never really asked for all these experiences. Like everyone on the call, I think that I just also just have a deep love for the outdoors and I want to take care of it. And I have so many people of color, including my own family, who have such a marginalized relationship with the outdoors. That's something I'm going to talk about later. My dad is a Black man, first generation, first human in my family, born in this country from Cuba, born and raised in the Bronx. And, I've been a steward to him and his relationship to the outdoors. And I don't want to like keep talking too much because I know that we're going to get deeper into this conversation later, Joe, but I just wanted to say that I think for the sake of this call, a lot of my work really like deeply started evolving from 2020. And that really came with my relationship to the Mountain Club as a volunteer, then the Adirondack Explorer. I also volunteered with Outdoor Afro. And we'll also talk about some of the DEI work that we've done locally in Albany and connecting humans to the Adirondacks. I have a lot of mentors and a lot of people who I'm going to discuss later who do phenomenal work above and beyond what I do. And lastly, I just wanted to say that we've been able to, like Kari, create a lot of opportunities for humans who live in Albany and the greater capital region to access nature, but also to access all the tools that we need to be in nature, like fishing poles and snowshoes and skis and all that. So that's something that I've also been pretty proud of. But thank you, Joe. Looking forward to the conversation today.
Thank you, Clarice. That was awesome. I really appreciate you, being willing to be vulnerable and share your experiences. And I think it's really important for folks to understand. If you're sort of just tuning in, if you've somehow, found us here on the internet, my name's Joe Fox. I'm the Outdoor Rec Manager at the Northern Forest Center. And I am joined today by Kari Taylor, Director of Western Maine Addiction Recovery Center, Zach McCarthy, Founder and Executive Director of Inclusive Ski Touring, and Clarice Torrient, who has a wide background as an outdoor advocate in the Adirondacks. We are going to transition now to sort of our group discussion. I'm going to fire off some questions to the panelists. If you in the audience have questions, feel free to use the Q&A chat box here in Zoom rather than the actual chat. If you want to introduce yourself via chat, that's fine. But for questions, my colleagues behind the scenes, Maura Adams and Isabella Ronson, will be kind of screening questions and we'll filter them to me later. So if we could, we'll turn our screens on and sort of have a little roundtable discussion here. Fantastic. So kind of building off of the last portion of Clarice's talk, my first question for you is, I'm going to assume that you all believe outdoor recreation has the power to change lives. I'm just going to work on that assumption. I certainly feel that way, and it's what brought me into this field. I'm wondering if you can give an example of just how outdoor recreation has positively affected either your life or the lives of people that you work with, advocate for, and associated, like, what excites you about this type of work, which is, again, just exposing more people to the outdoors. And you can feel free to jump in whenever you feel comfortable.
Yeah. Thanks for the question, Joe. For me, there's one standout memory that really jumps to me, and it was 2 years ago now. That winter, we had just, really started to ramp up our programs more and more. And I was out personally skiing on Mount Washington, just a day for myself. To be quite honest, I was not quite in a social mood that day. It was going to be a headphones in sort of activity for myself. And I was sitting in the parking lot getting ready, and there was a group of women who were walking up to approach me. They were walking over towards my direction. I kind of gave the internally, oh, roll my eyes, don't want to have a conversation right now, just not in that social mood. And the four women came up and they were like, "Oh, you're Zach," making sure I was who they thought I was. And they just said that they wanted to thank me for the work that we were doing and the programs that we offered. Each one of them had met through the programs that we offered and learned ski touring through the programs that we offered. And this was their first time going out into the backcountry for each one of them. And they were able to do that from the connections that they had made there and from the skills that they had made through our programs. They went on to further share how much of an impact it has had in their lives and through, particularly the winter, which are, very long and cold here in New England, that they feel a new sense of excitement and adventure to be able to go out. And it's no longer, oh, okay, what are we doing to get through the winter? Oh, I can't wait for summer to start, but I can't wait for that next snowstorm to come and to be able to get out with these new friends that I've made and try enjoy this new form of recreation that they've fallen in love with more and more. So that's always a memory that stands out and jumps out to me.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing. Kari or Clarice, any ideas, thoughts?
Sure. So, God, there's been so many amazing moments. I think probably one of the most impactful things that I've experienced is watching people who have been struggling with addiction come alive and almost fall and to get to watch them fall in love with nature like I did, and for them to build confidence. I'm in one of those situations where frequently I meet people while they're still in active addiction, and I get to walk alongside of them in their journey. And to be able to provide another tool for people to do that successfully. For a long time, recovery from addiction was really kind of limited to 12-step programs, treatment, and now we have a much better understanding of it. And I love that I'm offering a menu of options for people to do something that helps them to find confidence and peace and love.
That's awesome.
That's awesome, Kari. I one memory that came to mind, actually when Kari was speaking, was that there was a time that I was volunteering on Wright Mountain, and these two women of color came up the mountain and they saw me, and we ended up talking for about an hour. They weren't like the most typical, like skinny, hiking looking humans necessarily, and they had been engaging with a lot of hikers that were really tense with them, and really discouraging of them and like talking about their gear. And when I had met with them, they had food, they had a first aid kit, they had plenty of water, they had, rain gear and everything. I thought that they were very prepared compared to a lot of humans I see sometimes outside. And I thought it was really important for us to have a conversation. They had driven all the way from Yonkers. They were on the McIntyre Range. They were at the lodge. Like that's a very deep commitment to be out there and to go and to enjoy yourself and nature and want to have this amazing experience that we all want to have and be met with abrasive feelings as if they shouldn't have been there. Constant comments when most humans just say hi and keep it going. And I've had the majority of the time that I'm out there, that is the experience. But for these women, that they were very taken aback. It was really important for me to hold space for them because I wanted them to ensure, like, listen, like I'm out here all the time. Yes, that happens, but like this is a free space. You are a New York resident, you're an American, like this is here for you. This is here for you. And I need you to feel safe and empowered here so that you want to take care of it. Other moments in time that really stay with me are when humans who are afraid of water go paddling. There's been a couple of opportunities in my life where I've been with humans who are so afraid of the water. They've been so marginalized from the water. They haven't had the opportunity to go to the Y. They didn't have humans around them to teach them as kids how to just jump in the water and swim and feel safe and happy. And that's one of my favorite places. And especially all the lakes in the Adirondacks and in the North Country. We're so blessed. And having that opportunity, either volunteering with groups and on bus trips in the past or with my own family, like bringing people up to Lake Placid and getting on a boat and boating, and people laughing and enjoying themselves and knowing that they have space there and it's okay and take it up, enjoy it. Those are some of my most favorite moments because I feel like it's like what Kari and Zach says, it's like you're an extension of something that you love. And you're then empowering other humans to go be extensions of the thing that you love. And I think water safety is so important. So like getting humans accommodated to the water is something that I'm very passionate about. And the same thing with the outdoors, so that people want to take care of it too. It's getting hot out there, y'all. Like we all know, I'm so worried about snowboarding. We talked about this last week. We talked, Zach. And so getting everybody in love with the earth, I think, is what's going to keep this planet alive.
That's awesome. Thank you all. I like knowing people's origin stories about what gets them into this kind of work, what fires them up. Um, so again, we're talking about making the outdoors welcoming. And in our work at the center, we work with a lot of nonprofits in the region on things like, good wayfinding or making trailheads, look nicer, cleaner, um, assisting in mapping projects and doing a lot of work like that, right? So there's a sort of infrastructure that makes the outdoors welcoming that is very important. But I think what you all are doing is actually literally welcoming people and inviting them into the outdoors. Understanding that some of them have very real and/or perceived barriers to participation. Can you talk about some of the work that you're doing to sort of, um, if not fully remove, like lessen those barriers? We talked a bit about, making things affordable. But what else are you dealing with or seeing with, and what do you think we can do as an industry to truly welcome more folks into the outdoors?
I'll start. Transportation. That is by far the biggest barrier that we come up against. And it's because it's very limited what we can do to accommodate those transportation needs, but we have. So we budget money to help people get to our activities. So one of the ways we do that is staff of the Hills Recovery Center. If they can, they go out and pick people up for the event and then bring them home. The other thing we do is we enlist trusted volunteers, community members who are willing to provide rides to people, and we pay them a stipend. And then the other thing we do is give out gas cards, and all you have to do is say you need one, and you have one, no questions asked. I hear from people all the time that say, oh, I would love to go, but I don't have a way to get there. And unfortunately, we can't get everyone who wants to come. So just getting that, it's like the benefit is we're in a rural area and surrounded by nature. The downside to that is we're in a rural area surrounded by nature. So we're still trying to work that out and problem solve. Yeah, that's probably one of the most frustrating barriers that we come up against.
Nice. Oh,
Yeah, on our side, there's sort of we look at this in two different buckets. Like there's what we can do and what we can't do. There's, barriers that certainly exist across, like from our side, transportation is certainly a huge barrier for folks getting out as well. And we try to be able to facilitate, group rideshare opportunities, or even just like, okay, here are all the participants coming out for a specific program. If anyone's interested in carpooling together, that sort of thing. But unfortunately, like we're not at the point where we have money to budget to be able to support the transportation into things. Some of the areas that we really do be able to provide, that we really work to provide a lot more access or to knock down the barrier, is simply the comfort side of things. It's not just the financial side or, the ability to get there, even the interest in the program, but for someone to feel welcome to be able to join a program. We offer a bunch of different affinity groups for people of different underrepresented backgrounds, or, women's groups, non-binary groups, queer focus groups that are really designed to be able to create a space that people feel welcome and encouraged to be themselves and to celebrate the identities of who they are at their core. So really ensuring there's that space that makes people know that they are welcome for who they are, and not just stating, oh, this event is open to everybody, or we welcome, people from all backgrounds, but actually working to do something on that side and ensuring that there is that comfort and there is that welcoming atmosphere that drives the not just desire, but the actual action to come out and to join a program, to know, oh, okay, these people are true allies or truly want to support this area. And a big part of that too is, for us having volunteers who represent those communities or who really believe in what we're doing. So, it's not myself as a white cis male who's leading a queer program or a BIPOC program, but instead working with the people and giving them the tools necessary to be able to help provide these spaces and ensure that they're being, these groups are being led by members of the community and that they're supported by members of those communities.
Thanks, Kari. Thanks, Zach. Now I don't want to mention anything that you all have already mentioned. And Gear Shares to bringing kids to camp is something that I have worked with in coalition with friends that are community school liaisons at some of the elementary schools in Albany, and different community groups in Albany, but also making sure that those kids don't go to camp one time, but trying to create like legacy campers out of kids that are inner city kids. In addition to that, I was thinking about some of the things that like you can't touch, and I think that something that I work fervently for in the Adirondacks is like just humanizing like the Black experience there, because I don't blame humans for being afraid of things they don't know or don't understand or haven't engaged with or being standoff with. I have lived enough years. I know I look young, but I've lived enough decades to understand that fear does wild things inside the human psyche and in our brains. It's just how we're wired. But in order to combat that fear, we need like new neural pathways. So we have to think about new ways of thinking. And in order to do that, we have to be fed new information and we have to see new things and we have to feel new feelings about people. So I think about the time that I was on the Northville Placid Trail, and we got off trail in Blue Mountain Lake and we hitchhiked from oh my gosh, I can't remember the state campground. I drive by it all the time. Lake Durant State Campground into Blue Mountain Lake, and we passed by this diner, and and this is in the smack dab of the Adirondack Park, and the diner was popping. And we're not known for food in the North Country, but like the diner was well established and the parking lot was full. And we ended up trying to go eat at the diner, and they turned us away, but they were too full. So we went down the street to a bar, and I asked the bartender, I'm like, "Yo, what's going on with that diner? Like, it looks like it's doing really well." And oh, and also I forgot to say, like when we hitchhiked into town, I also asked the guy who was our driver, I was like, "What's good with the diner?" Like, I've never seen an establishment like so booming here in Blue Mountain Lake. And he was like, "I don't like that guy." I was like, "Oh, okay." But he just like kind of like brushed off that guy. And I was just like, "Oh, that's really weird. Interesting." So I go to the bar, I ask the guy, "What's up with the diner?" And I explain what happened in the car with the guy that gave us the ride into town. And I was like, "What was that you think about?" And he was just like, "Well, the guy that owns the diner is Black. His name is Daryl. And some people around here don't like it that much." This was the bartender's words, not mine. And I was just like, okay. But ever since that day, like when we were on the trail, I was just like, first of all, I'm curious. I'm like, whom's is this guy? And like, whom's is this man who came here to Blue Mountain Lake to buy an establishment and open up a business? Like, there's not that many other Black humans in sight or in or around this area. There was 4 people who graduated from Indian Lake. Like it's like the population's so low there too. So I was really curious and ended up calling him and asking him to write an article about him. And I learned about his life and him running a business in the Adirondacks as a Black man and how people had treated him and the discrimination that he had felt that he had been receiving, especially from like contractors and people that he needed to do business with to like upkeep his properties. So for me and learning about like Dr. Alice Green, who was a Black woman who grew up in the park in the 50s and 60s, I think it's like really trying to uplift the voices of the people who are people of color who live in these places, who live in the most rural places, and trying to like engage with them and see how like again like we can lift up their voices and see like what do they think would be the best opportunities or experiences within these regions to like change the dial, to be more inclusive. And so I think that a lot of the work that I do with like writing and public speaking and bringing kids out is also just like trying to just show people that, you know, it's cool that we're here and I promise you we're okay.
Thank you for sharing that. I think that's a good kind of transition to sort of my next question, which was a lot of times when we talk about getting more people to the outdoors, folks in this region think about like getting folks from the inner city to come north, right? Or from regions outside of here. And I think what's really interesting about the three of you is that a lot of your work is serving like underrepresented populations that are a part of this population, right? People live here, they work here. They may not be the traditional outdoor recreationists, but they are a part of community. And I think what the work that you're doing is getting people familiar with seeing themselves in the outdoors. Can you talk maybe a little bit about how that type of work might be different than like really outward facing, hey, come on up here, sort of like a tourism promotion, and instead more of a community development, like really getting people more connected to their surroundings and why that work is important? I know, Kari, you talked about that in terms of like getting folks outside is providing space for them. And Clarice, you've talked about how it just feels good for your soul to be outside and like do these things and have a connection to nature. And Zach, I'm imagining like, folks seeing these mountains that they just haven't felt welcome at, or they can't afford to get out there, or they don't have the tools. Your sport in particular, getting folks into ski touring that's a hefty price tag if you were to just go out and start from scratch. So you're like by limiting those barriers, I think is really interesting. So any thoughts on that? And if not, we can kind of move on to some other questions.
Um, I'll say that community is at the heart of everything we do. We have a saying, recovery is possible, community is the cure. We really mean that. We're not just throwing words around. I have seen this community come together in so many different ways to support people with addiction and their families and friends. And it matters. First of all, when you have community involved, you can do anything. And then second, it makes people feel like they matter. It's so important to make people feel like they matter, and especially people who have struggled with addiction and maybe have like a lot of experiences and behaviors that produce a lot of shame for them. They need the community to come forward and say, you're okay. You're not alone. We're here with you. It's hard to explain how powerful that is. Yeah.
Thank you.
What comes to mind to me, and it's certainly echoing a bit of what Kari was saying there, is very specifically the community side of it. Joe, you'd mentioned it's not just a marketing push of, oh, how do we drive more tourism or bring more people up here? And there's certainly, with our sport or with ski touring and split boarding as well, there's very real financial barriers, gear barriers, and everything on that side. But even, there's a gentleman who comes to mind to me who lives in the local area. We're going to say Mr. Smith, just to be respectful of this individual. But Mr. Smith lives right in Bethel. They're a black snowboarder who moved up to the area from New Jersey, and they had been interested in split boarding for quite a long time. Had resources enough to be able to rent the equipment, knew enough people to be able to get out on that side, but never felt comfortable to do so, particularly to be able to go out into the backcountry due to other experiences that this individual had, like unfortunately racist experiences in the backcountry that had led to them not feeling comfortable to go out. So it wasn't just, the gear side of things or that, but it was making sure and giving them a space that they felt comfortable and that they knew they were surrounded by allies or people within their community to be able to get out. And then in providing that space, we've seen, this individual grow more and more in their own kind of backcountry experience and what they've gone on to go out and do and progressed as an individual on that side has been incredibly meaningful to that person in their life, not just, oh, here's an opportunity to go out and recreate, but here is something that they deeply love that they can go out to share with their friends, to share with their community. And that person has, since then gotten involved and is one of our core volunteers at Inclusive Ski Touring. So I think it's really important to build that community side that's not, oh, I'm just going up to, I have a hole of money burning in my pocket and I want to go try this recreation, or I want to go up to this new area, or here's a tourism push, but I'm going to this area because the community that's being offered, and to be able to connect with others who are like me, who feel the same way that I do about recreation, and to be able to learn something new.
Awesome. I like the way that story ended more than it began. So, awesome. So this is probably more geared towards Kari and Zach, but you both have a lot of volunteers that are associated with your programs. And I'm curious how, one, you sort of recruit and cultivate volunteers. Zach, sounds like that was a case of, someone was a participant in your program and just wanted to give back, which is amazing. And then two, how do you reach participants? Particularly interested with you, Kari, with folks that are sort of in inactive recovery and sort of dealing with whether it's HIPAA rules or what is that sort of um, privacy, confidentiality kind of look like? If you could talk maybe a little bit about how you kind of create that space and in programs for the participants to feel safe and talk about what they need to talk about.
We've created a culture of that. And most of the time people need to experience it to really understand it. But so everybody who works for our organization is a person in recovery as well, and is recovering out loud. So they're willing to share the experiences that they've had both in addiction and recovery. And that is so incredibly powerful. It makes, I can't think of anything else that makes people feel as comfortable as when they share something about themselves that has caused them a lot of pain, and the person sitting across from them says, yeah, me too. And just the relief that comes over a person to know that they're not alone. So we have built an amazing reputation in our community, and we're providing direct addiction recovery services on a daily basis. So we're in constant contact with the community. We're also providing harm reduction services for people who are in active addiction. So we're working on building relationships and trust with them long before they may make a decision to try something else or do something else. So that reputation is just so important. And we've built a lot of relationships with other community organizations as well. So not only the participants, the people that we're serving, are they saying good things about us? Hey, they're good guys, you can trust them. We have other businesses and organizations also saying the same thing about us. So I think it's really important, especially in our work, to have the right people doing the work. You don't just have experience with addiction and therefore become the right person. It really needs to be somebody who understands how scary it can be to try to recover from addiction, and is willing to share their own experiences to make someone feel comfortable. And so this is years of relationship building before this program started. So we put out a call for volunteers and people answer. We have people reaching out to us asking, hey, I want to volunteer. What can I do? So we also have to make sure that we have the capacity to manage those volunteers. That's really, really important. And keep like a database of all the different ways that a person can volunteer based on their interest, their skill sets. So I just feel really fortunate. We have not had any difficulties getting the community to support the work that we're doing.
That's awesome. Thank you. And Zach, how do you recruit your volunteers?
Yeah, so I'll say to kind of prefix it, the volunteer side of things is one thing, particularly about inclusive ski touring, that really warms my heart, of lack of a better way to say it. You know, we're really working on developing an inclusive uphill community overall and making sure that people feel like they do have safe spaces in the outdoors to be able to go out and recreate, that we're trying to, you know, shift the needle as far as the overall opinion and shift around who's getting out into the backcountry to hopefully change or have an impact on experiences that people are having when they're out and about. And so, you know, it is part of our positioning as an organization and the, you know, programs that we're doing, and that we're actively, you know, making these spaces happen and providing an impact that people know is genuine and real. But when we go out and we ask for volunteers, similarly, like people answer. There's a lot of folks who want to get involved, and where it warms my heart is it's such a clear message of, oh, there's a large amount of people out there who believe in this same thing, who want to work towards making this happen, who want to create more safe spaces for people to go out and do. So I think, you know, on like the volunteer side, when you have a mission or an objective that's clear and has a real impact and, you know, really makes a difference in a community, people want to answer and people want to support. The volunteer management side of things is certainly, you know, a fun learning thing for myself and for inclusive ski touring. It's an area that we're always learning and growing. Kari, I'm taking little notes off of your, you know, volunteer form of sorts there, because we too will get people who reach out and are like, hey, we can do more. Like, how can we help? How can we support? And being able to have a system in place really is important, and ensuring that those volunteers are appreciated and know how valued their work is also really important. You know, volunteer retention year after year, and not just having someone sign up and help out with a program, but want to get involved more and more, having sort of volunteer tiers. Like we'll have people who join as assistant volunteers to help out with programs at first, and then step into the lead volunteer role of really kind of leading those groups, or people who can even step up further and help manage some of the volunteers at a certain location or coordinate overall with the volunteers. But creating different spots for people to get more involved if they desire, and then also having the backside to ensure that they're appreciated and that they want to come back and continue to do the work year after year and know the impact of the work that they're having.
It's awesome. We've got about 10 more minutes or so left in our sort of roundtable, and then we'll kind of open it up to participants here to ask questions. I'm going to start with the sort of fear side of things, then hopefully we'll kind of end this on some positivity. Um, what are some of your biggest concerns about the state of outdoor recreation in the region? I guess particularly as it pertains to having a more representative participatory base in these activities, or just in general, just folks living here. Like, are there things that concern you?
Well, I guess I'll go first. One of the concerns I have is recent, I think it was last summer, I was hiking Giant Mountain, if I remember correctly. It was one of the high peaks, and it was summer, so it wasn't hunting season. And this human had this humongous like assault rifle attached to them, which was not used to seeing, was a little confused by it, but whatever. And I don't mind guns. I know a ton of hunters. My dad was in law enforcement. I grew up with around them, so whatever. That's not the purpose of this conversation, but sometimes I am really, really worried about arms outdoors, and then with people of color, just because of what has happened around our country around policing. And I know it's not anyone's intent ever to hurt anyone. I don't think that that's the case, but when there's an opportunity or mistake, it ends up becoming a national tragedy. And I want people to feel more comfortable in these spaces. So that's one thing. I'm also worried, and I think we all share this too. I'm worried about the environment. And I'm worried if more humans aren't caring about the environment, that we're all going to be SOL out at the end of the day. And I don't want that to be the case. I want people to feel empowered and be able to explore and enjoy themselves and heal in this environment. And so I'm very, very, very concerned about that. And I really go back to the swimming thing. I think Black people have been very marginalized from open water for a long time. And I think that that really stems back to segregation in the Jim Crow South, with segregation of pools and public beaches and whatnot. And people were marginalized from these spaces. And then it created this culture of other, and no, it's not for me. And then fear, because now you don't have access to learning and appreciating. And I really think it is a safety hazard to not know how to swim. And I think that of like a lot of like not just people of color, but low income humans. I'm also like speaking of folks who are other abled as well. So I just, just being conscious of how we can make sure that everybody is safe as well outside.
Zach Akari,
Yeah.
things that concern you. There's a lot to be
So
concerned about right now, I would think.
there is. And okay, so everybody knows funding is always a concern. And that's my biggest fear, that we wouldn't be able to continue to fund our program, our center, our organization. But beyond that, one of the fears I have is so that there's still a lot of stigma around addiction in our community. And we work at that, and we educate people, and we do all these social events, and we work really hard at it. But when people are joining us on it during our activities, we always ask permission to take pictures of them, and everyone always says yes. And one of the ways we share about what we're doing and we garner more interest is to share pictures on social media. So we're essentially outing people. I mean, they've given us permission to do that, but I worry that then they will be the recipient of some sort of stigmatizing experience because they were brave enough to, share on social media and everywhere else their experience participating in our program. So on one hand, it's really great that we get the message out that this is our target audience, which happens to be everyone, by the way. Either you have suffered with addiction or you loved someone who suffered with addiction, most people. But that, a lot more work still needs to be done. And I just don't want someone to then have to face stigma or some sort of impact in their daily life based upon their choice to share that they've struggled with addiction.
Yeah, my kind of overarching concern is really in regards to general outdoor accessibility, or the really ability to go out and to enjoy these recreation opportunities, and then the separation that kind of compounds from less people being able to get out. And so really what I mean behind that is there's a very real financial side of things. And I don't want to dive into the full state of the economy or anything that's going on that side, but I am concerned that people will have less and less financial means to be able to go out and recreate in whatever form that means for them. And as that continues to happen more and more, it means that there's going to be more communities who don't have somebody who is an outdoor enthusiast. So if I live in a downtown urban area and everybody that I know doesn't go out to the mountains or doesn't go to the beach or doesn't go to these things, I might not have the interest to do it. And nobody else around me is saying, hey, would you want to come and try this activity with me? So then it's only creating more and more of a compounded separation, or kind of like exclusion from it, where it's not even an option that's thought of. There's no financial means to do so, and there's no community around you that's, pushing to go out and have this. So rather than more and more people getting out or gaining interest or saying, oh, this is an area for me, that there's less financial ability to do so. and then more and more kind of separation that's stemming from that.
All right. Well, those are certainly things to be concerned about, and I share your apprehension for sure. But I think there's a lot to be excited about as well. And so the next question is, what excites you about the future of outdoor recreation in our area? It seems to me that there's like a recognition by a lot of folks at a lot of different levels of government and industry and communities that once maybe were like, oh, those punk snowboarders or backcountry skiers or those like hooligans on mountain bikes or those dirtbag rock climbers or like river rats or whatever. People are recognizing like these people have money and they can spend it and they can like help our local economy. So I think people are recognizing the power, at least economically, of outdoor recreation. But yeah, what excites you about the future of outdoor rec in the region?
Yeah, this one's a easy or one that I get excited about, and so there's sort of a two-prong, but one is, when we look across the country, there's more and more states that are developing offices of outdoor recreation or areas that have a large focus on outdoor tourism, sort of speaking to what you were saying there, Joe, about, the recognition, oh, it's not just these punk snowboarders or mountain bike hooligans, but people who are coming up, who are driving revenue to local economies, who are helping revitalize local economies, creating areas that people want to move to, that they want to live at, that they want to be surrounded by because of the access to the outdoor recreation. So that I think is incredibly exciting. And then it's also the nature of the outdoor recreation community that we've continued to see grow and cultivate more and more. I think, 20 years ago, the state or general feeling of the outdoor community was a lot more exclusive and like, oh, you don't have this knowledge, you shouldn't be here, or creating more of these barriers. Whereas now more and more I see that people want to get others into it, that they want to share this opportunity, that they really and truly believe that the outdoors are accessible for anybody. And so that can't just be a small handful of people who are saying or sharing or talking about that belief, but it's having the entire community that makes that belief a reality and truly starts to shift the needle of making people feel accessible, of looking and seeing that we are having this panel today and there's currently 50 other participants sitting in who obviously actively care about this sort of work and who believe about making the outdoors accessible towards other people. And so I think it's the shift of the overall community that this is something that's being talked about, that it's being recognized, and that needle is really kind of heading in the right direction. It's not going to happen overnight, but hopefully this trend continues more and more, and with more support from the outdoor economy, from the state and federal level, and with different organizations stepping up to do more in this area. I think it's I don't know, hopefully going to make a big difference in the long run and get more people involved and provide more access to the outdoor spaces.
Awesome. Any additional thoughts, Kari or Clarice?
I think I completely agree with what you said, Zach. What excites me is that we are making the outdoors more accessible to people. I mean, we all know that like skiing and certain outdoor recreation can be really expensive, but I don't think a lot of people realize that even just hiking or, other outdoor activities, there is gear, there are barriers, and people don't have access to those things. So the fact that we're allowing them to have the access to do something that they enjoy is just really cool. And then also, my connection with the outdoors is really, it's like a spiritual connection for me. And I love that I get to share that with other people. I mean, you have your own relationship with the outdoors. It doesn't have to be like mine. But the idea that other people can experience the same thing and that other people do experience the same thing is just really beautiful. And ultimately, the more people who enjoy being in the outdoors, the more important it becomes, the more accessible it will be. At least I hope.
Oh, Joe, I think I was just gonna add that it's nice to have these conversations because they didn't exist anymore. And I remember when I was a kid, I I felt a lot more isolated. Um, and I hope by having these conversations, we don't need to have these conversations at some point, that we work ourselves out of a problem here, and that the community can prosper fully representative of our nation and our states and our local economies. And something that you said earlier, um, Joe, that I wanted to speak on was that like we're losing a lot of population in a lot of our rural places and a lot of the places that are represented within this not-for-profit. And when I talk about the North Country and in the Adirondacks, like that's a huge issue right now. And when we're thinking about, I'm not saying tourism specifically, but when we're thinking about bringing a new populace in to bolster an economy, we have to ensure that that economy is ready to truly welcome these humans in with open arms. If not, it's disingenuous. And I think that we have a history of doing so at some times in periods, like specifically like with the iron ore industry in the North Country and the Adirondacks. There was, during Jim Crow South, there was purposeful recruiting down in South Carolina to bring Black humans up to provide for that industry in the North Country. And a lot of there were few Black families there, and the level of racism that these people experienced, and you can read that in the memoirs of like Dr. Alice Green, it's just something that just sticks inside of people and can be so pervasive. So my biggest hope is that people can live in these places and feel included and healthy. And I think that that will add to the health and sustainability for all of us in the long run.
Awesome. I'm so honored to be facilitating this conversation with you all and so grateful for you sharing your time and experiences with us. This has been amazing, and I want to try to honor the folks that have kind of chimed in on the question and answers. So folks watching, if you have more questions, feel free to kind of add them into the Q&A. I'll just kind of go right down through the list. Probably geared more towards Kari and Zach, but the primary methods of finding people for your programs, I think we've touched on that a little bit, kind of some word of mouth, sounds like some social media, but yeah, other ways that you're reaching participants.
For us, that's it. I mean, it's really, it's grassroots. It requires a lot of work, a lot of effort, but boy, does it pay off. And I'm trying to think if there's any other way that we're connecting with people. I would think I would just go back to connecting with the other community businesses and organizations that are coming into contact with people struggling with addiction, which has been really great for them to feel. For a long time, they felt very powerless to do anything about it. And they seem very relieved. They are relieved that they have us, they have somebody to contact, that there's a potential that something can be better. Yeah, I can't think of that's primarily it.
Yeah, for inclusive ski touring, certainly the social media marketing has been incredible, and it's not just getting more people out, but showing people that we're building a community that they want to come and join. It's not, just creating Google ads or having this pop up first, but it's having people see, oh, this is something that I really want to get involved with, not just I want to learn ski touring and I'm typing that into Google, or seeing a printed ad somewhere, but seeing, oh, this is a community that I want to get involved with. Those are people who have the same sort of beliefs like myself, or who have the same love for the outdoors as myself. And so I think that that's really huge. And also the same exact thing with community on the word of mouth side of things. It's not people saying, oh, I got to learn this new sport through here, but I've gotten to connect with this incredible community of folks in the outdoors and continue to have come back time and time again, even after learning the sport, because of the community side of things. And as they share that with their friends and get more people excited about it, it makes a huge difference on the programming side of things for us, or getting more participants involved. The last big thing for us, I'd say, would be the event space, whether it's, a preseason event for us, or a fundraising event, even just like a community event in a certain area. We have an event series coming up in Portsmouth, New Hampshire at Treeline Outfitters, where once a month, November, December, January, February, and March, there'll be a community night with like discounted drafts and free pizza to learn about inclusive ski touring, just connect with others in the community, and just to get out and have a fun Friday night or connect with others who like to do the same sort of thing. And so that's a great way for people who are in Portsmouth who have no idea what inclusive ski touring is to see, oh, well, there's free pizza and discounted beer and a shop I like in an area I like. I'm going to go and check this out. And they can learn about our programs there as well, or at least become aware of the programs. Or within the winter season itself, we will do, like a demo day or a larger on snow, like one-off event. That's not a program specific event. That's, a lot, I don't want to say more appealing, but there's, gear giveaways. There's, opportunities to win stuff, to sit down at an educational talk with someone who's a professional in a given field, to be able to try ski gear for free with a bunch of different vendors around and that side of things. So having this larger event that is easier to spread awareness about, or just to like market in a, I don't know, sort of general capacity rather than like a niche capacity, that is able to sort of put out what we're doing, or at least get our name out to a larger group of people who are then able to figure out or look into more and more about what we're actually doing and what we're offering as an organization.
Awesome.
Can I add one more thing? I just wanted to say, I think this is really important. We do targeted messaging. So we try to think about what are the things that would possibly keep people from joining the activity. And we really try to work that out and go through it. And then we try to message specifically to them. So for example, I'm introverted, I'm shy. Asking me to go meet a group of new people is like, not likely to happen, don't want to do it. So how do we then address those people that might feel the same way? And so we put messaging out, which talks about how this activity is actually perfect for shy people because there's an activity happening. You're not sitting across from someone and feeling pressured to have a conversation. Again, it happens organically. So we go down the list and work on our messaging like that.
Awesome. All right. My next question for you is, let's see. The love for outdoors is a special feeling. How would you describe that feeling to someone who's never experienced nature or who might be afraid to experience it in a way that will change their perspective? Like the question here from David Upson was, for example, whitewater rafting or doing an overnight in the backcountry. So you've never done this before. Maybe you're already a little nervous because you haven't felt represented in this outdoor space before. Just going in the outdoors and meeting new people in itself is challenging. You've overcome the barriers to transportation, to all of these things, but like, how do you get them stoked? How do you put into words like, dude, you should really try this. It could change your life. You're gonna have a blast outside. Like, how would you describe the outdoors to someone who has no reference point whatsoever? Or like the feeling of swimming, like the feeling of weightlessness and freedom. Like, how do you talk about that?
I think it's, can definitely be very, modality specific, like be it swimming or biking or skiing. But the one thing that I would consistently going back to is feeling connected to the world around you, or to the earth that we all live on. Not just, it's so easy to get caught up in with family, with work, with everything you have going on, with, the hustle and bustle of an urban area. But getting outside, stepping away from that and being out long enough to kind of disconnect from everything else that you have going on and all these other inputs in life, to take a step back and connect with the earth and with the world around you, and to be able to share that with the people who you're out with is something that's just incredibly magical, and that it's really hard to be able to put words specifically behind of what that feeling is, but challenging that person to use it as a way to connect with the world around them and to connect with the areas that are, the nature that they have in their own backyards, or that they have at their accessible recreation, or access that they have accessible for recreation. And I think that that's something that's really special and really key and applicable to any form of outdoor recreation.
Other thoughts?
I would say, like when Zach said connecting, I've thought about the word like belonging. Like this is something that, yeah, we're connected to this, but we also have a sense of like nature doesn't judge me. Like nature itself does not judge me. If anything, it wants me to use it symbiotically. It gives, it's not supposed to be just like this taking relationship. And you said it earlier, Joe, like this, like when I'm in nature, that there is this feeling of reminding myself I'm not that. Like, I know that we like to say, like, we are the main character of our television, whatever. I'm not the main character of anything. I'm a part of this great community of life, and we're all in this movie. Like, I'm not the main character. And I think being out in nature is one of the most forward facing reminders of that, is that like, and I think Zach was touching on this, that like we are a part of this like bigger interdependent impermanent like life that's constantly moving and reinforcing each other. And when it comes to being out in nature, once you get over the barrier of safety and fear, then you can get to that. Because as you were talking, I was just like, oh, there's so many people where there's just like this barrier though. And I think that that comes with getting over that barrier is with consistency and having stewards who don't necessarily like out cool you out there. Because I feel like sometimes that can happen. Like, people who want to be inclusive could sometimes be gatekeepy of certain things.
All right. Curious not to put you on the spot, but you talked about being the first person of color that was a summit steward, and not to out any particular agency, but let's say one of the many nonprofits, some of which have representatives here on the call today. How can they, recruit, so to say, or make the positions that they have attractive to more folks, to have more diverse employment, more diverse representation? Um, how can they attract folks to try a career in the outdoors?
No, I love this question. And I want to preface with that. I was the first like Black Summit steward, but there were other people who were like Asian and Hispanic who were there. So in regards to the Adirondack Club, the Mountain Club, because I don't want to take any credit that I can't. But what I was gonna say is that I think really like and Kari mentioned this earlier, is sending that really specific messaging to humans. There are people, I'm unique, but not really that unique. I see people outside all the time that look, I no, excuse me. I'm seeing more and more humans outside that look like me, but they're stuck in their affinity groups too. So I think that that happens often, but I think that those affinity groups can be really good resources for people to really engage in terms of leadership with people of color. I also think that like going to like specific targeting of ecology programs in undergraduate schools is really important. And especially I saw a question about like people in the high school and junior high. I was a Sherpa in Newburgh, New York when I was growing up. So there are programs, especially in a lot of these urban environments, because people like us, there are a lot of us who really want to share this love. So I think it's like engaging with these groups that already exist and sending personal messages out like, hey, I see you out here. And this like volunteer group that you're doing with the Boys and Girls Club all the time. There's this volunteer coordinator position opening up at the preserve. Like, can we maybe talk about an opportunity here? People love to be seen, and people love to feel connected. And I think that when you reach out to them individually and show them like, hey, I see your leadership and I would love to work with you, that they're usually like well receptive of that.
Thank you for that insight. That's very helpful. Okay. Going back to Kari and Zach, one of the questions that came in was, how do you overcome the sort of gear barrier? So, Kari, for example, you're taking folks out who may, not have a canoe and they want to go on a paddling trip. And Zach, particularly like split boarding. What kind of relationships are you forming with other partners? Can you just speak a bit about that?
Yeah, the gear side for us has been a particularly interesting area to sort of sort out and come to a sort of plan that works and supports our programming. Back in 2022, we had initially looked at getting our own gear to be able to offer this for participants and be able to have complete control over the price side of things. But as we look to scale up the organization and, having programming at multiple locations on every single weekend, it's impossible to bring gear to Mount Abram and Greenwood, Maine and Whaleback in Enfield, New Hampshire. That's almost 3 hours away for the start of this, a program at 10 a.m. on Sunday morning. So instead, what we've really shifted to do is to use one of our largest sponsors and be able to connect them with the with the venue partners that we have. So we connect a ski and snowboard company with Mount Abram, with Whaleback, with Cranmore, or a shop in the local area to be able to offer them kind of unique pricing on uphill rental equipment that makes it favorable for the mountain to purchase this. It makes it makes us have a better relationship with this sponsor of the organization, because we're also now putting participants into that rental gear. They're able to get their gear kind of out and more customer facing. And then the resort side of things has the capacity, they have the infrastructure in place and already have the employees in place on the rental shop side of things, where it's really a symbiotic relationships on all sides, that it benefits the mountain. We're able to offer our participants a certain level of favorable pricing based off of the purchase deal that they've gotten through our sponsor that we set them up with. And so it really works out that it benefits kind of all parties involved and allows us to recognize, okay, it's not actually within our capacity to handle the gear rental side of things itself. We don't have the physical infrastructure for it. We don't have the insurance in place for it. We don't have, whatever X, Y, and Z might be that's taking it. So instead, we took a step back and tried to figure out different ways to be able to provide that and to make sure the gear was available that benefits our partnerships in a larger scale overall.
Yeah, I'll add that we have to budget a significant amount of our funding to purchase gear. It means we get to do less outings, or maybe there's a few things that we really want to do that we can't afford to do because we've had to dedicate money, funding to gear. But this is an area where we have room for growth. And we have reached out to some outdoor companies, LL Bean, Cabela's. We've put in some proposals, and unfortunately, we haven't been able to initiate a partnership with any of them. But it's so important. People can go out, have a great time, but if they don't have a way to go and do it again, it's still nice that they got to go, but the whole point is we want them to come with us, but then we want them to continue to come and to share with their friends and family. So we have some work to do with obtaining more gear.
Awesome. Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, I can understand why funding is something that keeps you up at night for sure. That's obviously critical to this work. So for those of you watching, check out these organizations online, find out how you can donate and support the great work that they're doing. Just doing a quick time check here. We are at 1:23, so a few more minutes. Kari, I know that you have programming that includes the whole family. Do you have any targeted programming for youth?
It's interesting that you asked that question, because over the last couple months, we have a really close working relationship with the local school district and school districts surrounding ours. And there has been, we do a lot of programming with youth to do prevention and wellness and social activities, and, trying to share preventative measures that they can implement in their life. But so this specifically has just come up, and we're looking at this next year. We've just started planning about dedicating at least one, maybe two of our outings to youth. Because just like with adults and peers, peer support can be so incredibly effective and important. Youth also need peer support, but those peers need to be youth. Like they need an adult, a caring adult in their life, but they really need to connect with their peers. And so we're hoping that we are going to be able to dedicate at least one, maybe two of our outings to youth. And like I said, we have a really good working relationship with the local schools, and they will help us do that, and they will promote it for us, and they will share it everywhere.
That's awesome. And Zach, your participants, is there sort of an age range, or do you know of programs that are doing similar work for youth?
Yeah, so we do allow participants who are 12 years and older to be accompanied. Like if you're 12 through 18, you need to be accompanied by a parent or guardian. A few years back, we did look at hosting a program that was designed specifically for youth. However, unfortunately, within the ski industry, if you offer a Learn To program for youth, parents oftentimes think of it more as a drop-off daycare so they can go skiing, which is just not what the organization has the capacity for. And for insurance reasons and whatnot, we do have to have children accompanied by a parent or guardian. So unfortunately, that program didn't really take off, and there wasn't as much interest to be able to do it as sustainably. Certainly would look to do a specific one-off program, or maybe have 2 or 3 of them offered if we were able to get enough interest for something like that. But that's kind of where we currently stand on that side of things. There are a couple of youth uphill touring groups around. I know a gentleman, Jesse Wall. He runs a gym, True Strength Athletics. He has a high school focused touring program that's been doing really well in the Oxford County area. I also know of a similar program up in the Upper Valley near Whaleback, or like right in the Hanover, New Hampshire area that's doing similar work. That's exciting to see. But it's definitely a niche area, and the gear side of things is really hard. So having an organization that can put their focus and resources behind that makes a significant difference there.
That's awesome. Just want to make note, we got a comment in the chat from Paul Smith's, Kathy Bonavis at Paul Smith's College, just saying that they are just send a brochure to 100,000 pre-college students with the promise and hope that they may see themselves in the kind of experience that you all here have been beautifully sharing, which is we are all outsiders, but no one is left out, which is pretty awesome. So I think, we talk about messaging and representation. That's great. So thank you, Kathy and Paul Smiths. All right. So again, I'm Joe Fox with the Northern Forest Center. I want to thank my 3 panelists for your time, just sharing the great work that you're doing, sharing your personal experiences. And as self-described introverts, I really appreciate you being extroverted today. I think that our participants have really enjoyed what you've had to say. So this kind of concludes this portion of our webinar. I do want to invite folks, if you've enjoyed this, to please mark their calendars for December 10th. So December 10th at noon, we will be hosting the Considerations for Housing-Friendly Planning and Zoning here in the Northern Forest. Explore barriers to new housing development that may be present in your town's planning and zoning, as well as tools and techniques that communities have utilized to address those barriers. We have some other links coming out for all of our webinars. We've hosted quite a few to date, and we'll continue to do this. Hopefully you found these valuable. You will be receiving a link to evaluate this webinar, the link to the next webinar, a link to sign up for our news digest, so northernforest.org. We have about a bi-weekly newsletter with all kinds of great things happening in the region, everything from this type of work, outdoor recreation, to housing, to workforce, employment training. And lastly, but not least, if you appreciate this work and the work of the Northern Forest Center, we would really appreciate you considering making a donation. And with that, I bid you all a great day. Zach, I'll see you shortly in Maine for the Maine Outdoor Economy Summit. And thanks again, folks, for being a part of this great webinar.
Thank you. Have a good one.
Thank
Take care.
you.
Bye all.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, everybody.